The space station Harmony was home to many different alien species. They lived together, worked together, and tried to understand each other. But some rules were never meant to be broken. The Velkai Nursery Wing was one such place where no outsider could ever go. Una had been living on Harmony Station for 3 years now. She was a human ambassador, which meant her job was to help humans and aliens become friends. She was good at her job. She smiled easily, learned languages quickly, and never lost her patience. The aliens on the station liked her. They said she was different from other humans. She was calm and kind. But today, everything was about to change. Una was walking through the eastern corridor when the alarm started. Red lights flashed on the walls. A loud voice spoke through the speakers in the common galactic language. Warning, life support failure in Section 7. All personnel must leave Section 7 immediately. This is not a drill. Una stopped walking. Section 7. That was the Velkai Nursery Wing. She felt her heart beat faster. Everyone on the station knew about the Velkai and their cubs. The Velkai were a proud species. They looked like large cats that walked on two legs. Their fur was silver and blue, and their eyes glowed in the dark. They were beautiful, but they were also very dangerous when it came to their young ones. No outsider had ever seen a Velkai cub and lived to tell about it. This was their most important law. The cubs were sacred. They were weak and helpless for the first year of their lives, and the Velkai protected them with everything they had. Any stranger who entered the nursery would be killed on sight. No questions, no mercy, no exceptions. Una understood this. She respected it. She had never even walked close to Section 7 in all her years on the station. But now the alarms were screaming, and something was very wrong. She ran to the nearest computer panel and pressed her hand against it. The screen showed her what was happening. A pipe had broken in Section 7. Toxic gas was filling the nursery wing. The air was becoming poison. Computer, Una said, how many life forms are in Section 7 right now? 12 adult Velkai, 3 infant Velkai, the computer answered. What is their status? Adult Velkai are showing signs of unconsciousness. Infant Velkai life signs are weakening. Una felt cold. The cubs were dying. The adults who were supposed to protect them had already fallen. The gas was killing them slowly. Computer, how long until rescue teams arrive? Estimated arrival time is 22 minutes. How long do the infants have? There was a small pause. Based on current toxin levels and infant body mass, estimated survival time is 4 to 6 minutes. 4 minutes. The cubs had 4 minutes to live, and help was 20 minutes away. The math was simple and terrible. Una stood there for a moment. Her mind was racing. She knew the rules. She knew that entering the nursery meant death. Even if she saved the cubs, the Velkai would kill her for touching them. Their law was absolute. But she also knew something else. She knew that 3 babies were dying right now, just a few hundred meters away from her. She could hear their weak heartbeats in her imagination. She could picture them, small and helpless, gasping for air that was slowly turning to poison. She could not let them die. Computer, she said, and her voice was steady now, give me the fastest route to the nursery. Ambassador Una, entry to Section 7 is forbidden for all non-Velkai personnel. This restriction cannot be Override Authority Una 77 Alpha. Emergency medical response. Show me the route. The computer was silent for a second. Then a map appeared on the screen, showing a path through the maintenance tunnels. Una memorized it in seconds. She was already running. The tunnels were dark and narrow. Una had to crawl through some parts. Her knees hurt. Her hands got dirty, but she did not stop. She could not stop. Every second mattered. The gas hit her when she was still 50 meters away from the nursery. It smelled like burning metal and rotten eggs. Her eyes started to water. Her throat felt tight. She pulled her shirt up over her nose and mouth, but it did not help much. The poison was everywhere. She found the nursery door and forced it open. The room inside was large and warm. Beautiful paintings covered the walls, showing Velkai history and legends. Soft beds were arranged in circles, each one designed to hold a precious cub. But now the room was filled with death. 12 adult Velkai lay on the floor. Their silver fur was dull. Their eyes were closed. Some of them had fallen while trying to reach the cubs. One female had her arms stretched out toward a small bed, her fingers just inches away from the tiny form inside. Yuna checked the adults quickly. They were alive, but barely. Their bodies were bigger and stronger than the cubs, so the poison was working slower on them. They would survive if help came soon, but the cubs would not. She found them in the center of the room, in three small beds placed close together. They were so tiny. Their fur was white and soft, like clouds. Their eyes were closed. Their small chests moved up and down very slowly. They were still alive, but not for long. Yuna did not think. She did not plan. She just acted. She unzipped her thermal jacket, the special one that kept humans warm in the cold parts of the station. Then she reached down and picked up the first cub. It was so light, it weighed almost nothing. Its body was cold, too cold for a baby. Yuna pressed it against her chest, against her heart, and felt its small form shiver. Human body temperature was 37 degrees Celsius. Velkai body temperature was only 28 degrees. Yuna was almost 10 degrees warmer than these babies' own parents. Her body heat wrapped around the tiny cub like a blanket. She picked up the second cub and then the third. She placed all three of them inside her jacket, against her skin. They were so small that they all fit easily. She could feel their cold noses pressing against her belly. She could feel their tiny hearts beating, fast and scared. "It is okay," she whispered. "I have you. I have you." The gas was getting thicker. Yuna's head was starting to feel strange. She needed to get out. She needed to get these babies to clean air. She ran. She ran faster than she had ever run in her life. Through the door, down the corridor, back into the maintenance tunnels. Her lungs burned. Her vision blurred. But she kept running. She did not stop until she reached the medical bay on the other side of the station. By then, she could barely breathe. She fell through the doors and collapsed on the floor, her arms wrapped protectively around her jacket. The medical staff rushed to help her, but she did not care about herself. "The cubs," she gasped. "Help the cubs." And then everything went black. Yuna woke up in a white room. The lights were soft. The air was clean and cool. She could hear machines beeping somewhere nearby. For a moment, she did not remember where she was or what had happened. Then it all came back to her. The alarms, the gas, the nursery, the cubs. She sat up fast, too fast. Her head spun and her stomach turned. A gentle hand pushed her back down onto the bed. "Easy, easy," a voice said. "You need to rest." Yuna looked up and saw Dr. Minji, the station's chief medical officer. She was a small woman with short black hair and kind eyes. She had been Yuna's friend since the ambassador first arrived on Harmony Station. "The cubs," Yuna said. Her voice was rough and dry. "Where are the cubs?" Minji looked at her for a long moment. There was something strange in her expression. Worry, maybe, or fear. "They are alive," Minji said finally. "You saved them." Yuna felt tears fill her eyes. Relief washed through her body like warm water. "They are okay? They are really okay?" "They are more than okay." Minji pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. "Yuna, do you understand what you did? I saved 3 babies from dying. That is all." "No," Minji shook her head. "That is not all. You did something impossible. Something that should not have worked." Yuna frowned. "What do you mean?" Minji took a deep breath. "The cubs were dying from the poison, yes. But they were also dying from something else. Their body temperature had dropped too low. Velkai infants cannot control their own heat. They need constant warmth from their parents, from their special heated beds, from the nursery's climate systems. When the life support failed, everything went cold. The gas was killing them, but the cold was killing them faster." Yuna remembered how cold the cubs had felt when she picked them up, like little balls of ice. "When you put them inside your jacket," Minji continued, "you gave them something no Velkai could give. Human body heat. You are almost 10 degrees warmer than their own mothers. Your body became like a furnace to them. You kept them alive when nothing else could." Yuna thought about this. She had not known any of that when she made her choice. She had not calculated temperatures or survival rates. She had just seen 3 dying babies and done the only thing she could think of. "There is something else," Minji said. Her voice was very quiet now. "Something you need to see." She helped Yuna stand up and led her to a small room connected to the medical bay. The room was warm, much warmer than normal. In the center was a special medical bed with high sides like a crib. Heat lamps glowed above it, keeping the temperature just right. And there in the middle of the bed were the three cubs. They were awake now. Their eyes were open, big and golden like little suns. Their white fur had become fluffy and soft, the way healthy Velkai cubs were supposed to look. They were playing with each other, tumbling and rolling and making tiny sounds that might have been laughter. "They are beautiful," Yuna whispered. "Watch," Minji said. She pressed a button on the wall. A small door opened, and a piece of warm meat slid into the crib on a tray. This was how the medical staff had been feeding the cubs while Yuna was unconscious. The cubs smelled the food. They stopped playing and looked at the meat. But they did not eat it. Instead, they did something unexpected. All three cubs turned their heads and looked directly at Yuna. Then, moving together like they shared one mind, they crawled across the bed and pressed themselves against the side of the crib closest to her. They reached their tiny paws through the bars, trying to touch her. They were crying, small, soft sounds that broke Yuna's heart. "They have been doing this since we separated them from you," Minji said. "Every time someone comes into the room, they look up, hoping it is you. When it is not you, they cry. They have barely eaten anything. They only want you." Yuna felt something shift inside her chest, something she could not name. "They bonded to you," Minji explained. "In those few minutes inside your jacket, while you were running through the station, while your heartbeat was the only sound they could hear, they bonded to you completely. To them, you are not a stranger. You are not a human. You are their mother." "No," Yuna said. "No, that cannot be right. I am not Velkai. I cannot be their mother." "Biology does not care about species," Minji said gently. "These cubs were dying. They were cold and scared and alone. And then you came. You held them against your heart. You kept them warm. You saved them. Their tiny brains decided in that moment that you were safety. You were home. You were everything." Yuna stared at the cubs. They were still reaching for her, still crying. She could not stand it anymore. She walked to the crib and put her hand through the bars. The cubs grabbed her fingers immediately. They pressed their faces against her palm. They started to purr, a sound so soft and sweet that it made Yuna want to cry. "What happens now?" she asked. "When the Velkai find out what I did?" Minji's face became serious. "That is the problem. The Velkai guards regained consciousness about an hour ago. When they found the nursery empty and the cubs gone, they did not take it well." "What do you mean?" "They think someone stole the cubs. They think it was an attack on their people. Commander Taiho is leading the search. They are checking every corner of the station, every room, every corridor, every ship. They will not stop until they find the cubs." Yuna's blood went cold. "And when they find them here? With me?" Minji did not answer. She did not need to. They both knew what would happen. The Velkai law was clear. Anyone who touched the sacred cubs must die. There were no exceptions. Not even for someone who saved them. "You could run," Minji said quietly. "There is a cargo ship leaving in 30 minutes. I could get you on it. You could disappear. The cubs are stable now. They would survive without you." Yuna looked at the cubs. They were calm now, holding her hand, purring softly. Their golden eyes looked up at her with complete trust, complete love. "If I leave," Yuna said slowly, "what happens to them? They would be returned to their families. They would be cared for." "But they bonded to me. You said so yourself. They think I am their mother. What happens to cubs who lose their mother?" Minji looked away. That was answer enough. Yuna made her decision. It was not hard. It was not complicated. It was the simplest choice she had ever made. "I am not running," she said. "I am staying right here." "Yuna, they will kill you." "Maybe." Yuna opened the crib and carefully lifted the first cub. It snuggled against her chest immediately, purring so loud she could feel it in her bones. She picked up the second cub, and then the third. They fit perfectly inside her jacket, just like before. "But these babies did nothing wrong," Yuna continued. "They did not choose to bond with me. They did not choose any of this. And I will not abandon them. I will not let them wake up alone and scared, wondering where their mother went. I will not do that to them. Minji had tears in her eyes. You are the bravest person I have ever known. I am not brave, Yuna said. I am just a person who cannot let babies cry. She sat down in a chair by the window, the three cubs warm against her heart, and waited for the guards to come. Commander Taiho was not a patient man. He had served the Velkai military for 30 years. He had fought in wars. He had protected his people from countless threats. He had seen death and pain and loss. Nothing scared him anymore. But right now, standing in the empty nursery, looking at three empty beds where three precious cubs should have been sleeping, Taiho felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Fear. How did this happen? He demanded. His voice echoed off the walls. Around him, his soldiers stood silent and ashamed. How did someone enter the most protected place on this station and take our children? Commander, one of the soldiers said carefully, the gas knocked us unconscious. We could not. I do not want excuses. Taiho slammed his fist against the wall. The metal dented under his strength. I want answers. I want to know who took the cubs, and I want to know where they are now. His second in command, a young female named Sora, stepped forward. She held a data pad in her hands. We have reviewed the security footage, Commander. Most cameras in this section were damaged by the gas leak, but we found something. She showed him the data pad. On the screen was a grainy image, barely visible through clouds of toxic gas. A figure in the nursery, small, moving fast, picking something up from the beds. Can you identify this person? Taiho asked. Not from this image, but we tracked their movement through other cameras as they left the section. Sora pressed a button, and the image changed. Now it showed a corridor on the other side of the station. The figure was clearer here. A human female, running, her jacket bulging strangely. Taiho stared at the image. His claws extended slowly, scratching the surface of the data pad. A human, he said softly. A human took our cubs. Yes, Commander. Find her. Find her now. Search every room on this station. Check every ship. Look in every corner and shadow. I want every soldier we have looking for this human. What about the other species on the station? Sora asked. Should we involve station security? No. Taiho's eyes burned with cold fire. This is a Velkai matter. Our cubs, our laws, our justice. The other species would not understand. He was right about that. The other species on Harmony Station thought the Velkai were too extreme about their young. They did not understand why touching a cub meant death. They did not understand the sacred bond between Velkai parents and children. They thought the law was cruel, but they did not know the truth. They did not know why the law existed. Centuries ago, before the Velkai joined the Galactic community, there had been a species called the Kranth. The Kranth were traders and collectors. They traveled the galaxy looking for rare and valuable things to buy and sell, and they had decided that Velkai cubs were the most valuable things of all. Velkai cubs were beautiful. Their white fur was softer than silk. Their golden eyes sparkled like jewels, and they were small and helpless and easy to take. For 50 years, the Kranth stole Velkai cubs. They sold them to rich collectors across the galaxy. They kept them in cages like pets. They bred them like animals. Thousands of cubs were taken. Thousands of families were destroyed. The Velkai fought back. They hunted the Kranth to extinction. They burned their ships. They destroyed their homeworld. They erased them from history. And then they made a sacred law that would protect their cubs forever. Any outsider who touched a Velkai child would die. No exceptions, no mercy, no matter the reason. This law had kept the cubs safe for 300 years. No one dared to touch them. No one dared to even look at them too long. The Velkai cubs were protected until now. Taiho led his soldiers through the station. They moved fast and quiet, like shadows with teeth. They checked every room, every storage area, every ship in the docking bay. They questioned everyone they found. Most species moved out of their way quickly, too scared to protest. The humans were different. You cannot search my quarters without proper authorization, a human man said, blocking his doorway. This is a violation of the Galactic Rights Agreement. I demand to speak to a station official. Tejo stepped very close to the man. He was much taller than the human and much stronger. His claws gleamed in the light. 3 of our cubs are missing, Tejo said softly. If I find out you are hiding them, I will tear your arms off and feed them to you. Now step aside. The man stepped aside. They searched for hours. They found nothing. No cubs, no sign of where they might be. Tejo's frustration grew with every empty room. Finally, Sora approached him with new information. Commander, we have analyzed the camera footage more carefully. The human female ran toward the eastern corridors. There is only one place in that direction with medical equipment advanced enough to keep the cubs alive. Where? The main medical bay. Tejo felt his heart beat faster. The medical bay, of course. The thief would need to keep the cubs healthy. She would need warmth, food, medicine. She would need the medical bay. How many soldiers do we have? Tejo asked. 47. Send them all. Surround the medical bay. No one enters or leaves. I want the place locked down completely. And then? And then I go in and get our children back. They moved through the station like a wave of silver and blue. 47 Velkai soldiers, armed and angry and ready to kill. The other species watched them pass with wide eyes. Some whispered to each other. Some ran to hide. The word spread quickly. The Velkai were hunting. Someone had taken their cubs. Someone was going to die. When they reached the medical bay, Tejo positioned his soldiers around every entrance. Windows were covered. Doors were guarded. There was no way out. He stood in front of the main entrance and took a deep breath. Inside this building was a thief who had broken the most sacred law of his people. Inside was someone who thought they could take Velkai children without consequences. They were wrong. Tejo pushed the doors open and stepped inside. The medical bay was quiet. Too quiet. The usual staff was gone, probably warned by someone that the Velkai were coming. Equipment beeped softly. Lights hummed overhead. The air smelled like medicine and fear. Tejo walked slowly through the main room, checking every bed, every corner. His soldiers followed behind him, spreading out to search the smaller rooms. Clear, they reported one by one. Clear, clear, nothing here. But Tejo knew better. The cubs were here. He could feel it somehow, deep in his bones, a connection that all Velkai shared with their young. He stopped in front of a small door at the end of the hallway. The door was different from the others, heavier, more secure, and there was a heat signature behind it, warm and steady. Commander, Sora whispered, our scanners show 4 life forms in that room. 3 small, 1 larger. 3 small. The cubs, 1 larger. The thief. Tejo reached for the door handle. His claws wrapped around the metal. He took one more breath. Then he opened the door. The room was warm, almost hot by Velkai standards. Heat lamps glowed from the ceiling. And there, sitting in a chair by the window, was a human female. She was young with dark hair and dark eyes. She wore a thick jacket, and the jacket was moving slightly. Breathing. 3 small shapes pressed against her chest from inside. The cubs. Tejo's eyes locked onto the human. Every muscle in his body tensed. Every instinct screamed at him to attack, to kill, to tear her apart for daring to touch what was sacred. But something made him stop. Something in her eyes. She was not running. She was not begging. She was not even afraid. She was just sitting there holding his people's children, looking at him with an expression he could not understand. My name is Yuna, she said quietly. I am the one you are looking for. And before you kill me, there is something you need to know. The room was completely silent. Tejo stood in the doorway, his soldiers behind him, all of them staring at the human woman who held their cubs. Yuna did not move. She kept her hands still, her body relaxed. She knew that any sudden movement could trigger an attack. These soldiers were not thinking clearly. They were running on fear and anger and ancient instinct. Step away from the cubs, Tejo said. His voice was low and dangerous, like thunder before a storm. I cannot do that, Yuna replied calmly. If I move too fast, it will scare them, and they have been through enough today. You dare to tell me what is best for our children? Tejo took a step forward. His claws were fully extended now, sharp and deadly. You stole them. You broke our most sacred law. You have no right to speak about what is good for them. I did not steal them. I saved them. Lies. It is not a lie. Yuna's voice remained steady. When the life support failed in your nursery, I was the closest person who could respond. I found your cubs dying. The poison gas was filling their lungs. Their bodies were growing cold. Your adults were unconscious on the floor, unable to help. I had a choice. I could follow your law and let 3 babies die, or I could break your law and give them a chance to live. She paused and looked directly into Taiho's eyes. I chose to let them live. Taiho hesitated. He had not expected this. He had expected fear. He had expected excuses. He had expected the human to beg for her life. But this woman was not begging. She was explaining. You expect me to believe that you entered the nursery out of kindness? He asked. Humans do not do things without expecting something in return. What did you want? Money? Power? Do you know how much a Velkai cub is worth to collectors? Yuna's expression changed. For the first time, he saw anger in her eyes. Cold, quiet anger. I know exactly what your cubs are worth, she said softly. They are worth everything. They are worth more than money or power or any treasure in the galaxy. They are children, innocent children who did nothing wrong except be born small and helpless in a universe that is not always kind. She shifted slightly in her chair, and Taiho's soldiers raised their weapons. But Yuna was not trying to escape. She was opening her jacket. Look, she said. The cubs were there, pressed against her chest. Their white fur was soft and clean. Their golden eyes were open, watching the soldiers with curiosity rather than fear. They looked healthy. They looked happy. They looked safe. And they were purring. Taiho had raised cubs before. He knew that sound. It was the sound Velkai babies made when they felt completely comfortable, when they were with their parents, when they were home. These cubs were making that sound while being held by a human. That is impossible, Sora whispered from behind Taiho. Cubs only purr for their family, only for Velkai they trust. They bonded to her, a new voice said. Everyone turned. Dr. Minji was standing at the back of the room. She had been hiding, waiting for the right moment to speak. Now she stepped forward, holding medical charts in her hands. Who are you? Taiho demanded. I am Dr. Minji, Chief Medical Officer of this station. I have been caring for the cubs since Ambassador Yuna brought them here. She held up the charts. I have all the medical data. The cubs' condition when they arrived, their treatment, their recovery. Everything is documented. I do not care about documents. You should. Minji walked closer, ignoring the weapons pointed at her. These charts prove that Ambassador Yuna saved the cubs' lives. When she found them, their core temperature had dropped to dangerous levels. The poison was shutting down their organs. They had minutes to live. Minutes. And the rescue teams were 20 minutes away. She showed Taiho the first chart. It displayed 3 small heartbeats, all of them weak and irregular. This was their condition when she found them. Minji changed to the next chart. The heartbeats were stronger now, steadier. And this was their condition 5 minutes later when she arrived at the medical bay. Do you know what changed? Taiho did not answer. Her body heat, Minji continued. Human body temperature is almost 10 degrees warmer than Velkai body temperature. When she put the cubs inside her jacket and held them against her skin, she gave them warmth that no one else could provide. Not their parents, not their heated beds, not any of your technology, only her. Taiho looked at the cubs again. They had crawled higher in Yuna's jacket and were now resting against her neck, their faces pressed against her skin. Their purring was louder now, so loud that everyone in the room could hear it. She became their heat source, Minji said softly, their lifeline. And in those few minutes, while she ran through the station carrying them against her heart, while her heartbeat was the only sound they could hear, they bonded to her, completely. Bonding does not happen that fast, Taiho said, but his voice had lost some of its anger. It does when cubs are dying. Their survival instincts are very strong. They locked onto the only source of safety they could find. And that source was her. Taiho stood still for a long moment. His mind was fighting against itself. Everything he knew, everything he had been taught, told him that this human needed to die. She had touched sacred cubs. The law was clear, but the cubs were purring. They were holding on to the human like she was their mother. They were happy and healthy and alive because of her. "Commander," Sora said quietly, "what do we do?" Taiho looked at Yuna. She was watching him calmly, waiting for his decision. She knew she might die. She had accepted that possibility, and yet she had not run. She had not tried to hide. She had stayed here, holding cubs that were not hers, protecting them with her own body. "Why? Why did you do it?" Taiho asked. His voice was different now, softer, more confused. "You knew our law. You knew the punishment for touching our cubs. Why did you risk your life for children that are not even your species?" Yuna smiled sadly. "Because they are children," she said simply. "That is all. They are small and innocent, and they needed help. When I saw them lying there dying, I did not see Velkai cubs. I saw babies, just babies. And I could not let them die alone." Taiho felt something strange in his chest, a feeling he could not name. It was uncomfortable and warm at the same time. "Humans are strange creatures," he said finally. "Yes," Yuna agreed, "we are." One of the cubs chose that moment to yawn. It was a tiny sound, adorable and silly. The cub stretched its small paws and then snuggled deeper into Yuna's jacket, making happy little noises. Several of the soldiers made soft sounds too. Even warriors could not resist a yawning baby. Taiho made a decision. "Lower your weapons," he ordered. "Commander?" Sora looked confused. "I said lower your weapons. This woman is not our enemy." The soldiers obeyed, but they looked uncertain. This was not how things were supposed to go. The law was clear. The punishment was death. "Our law exists to protect our cubs," Taiho said slowly, working through his thoughts as he spoke. "It exists because once our children were stolen and sold and treated like objects. We made the law to keep them safe." He looked at Yuna and the three cubs sleeping peacefully against her heart. "But this human did not steal our cubs. She did not hurt them. She saved them. She protected them with her own body, knowing that we would probably kill her for it. She broke our law, but she honored its purpose." "What are you saying, Commander?" "I am saying that this is above my authority." Taiho straightened his back and spoke formally. "This matter must be decided by the Queen. Only she can judge what happens next." Yuna's face showed no fear, only acceptance. "I understand. You will remain here under guard until the Queen arrives. You will not be harmed. You have my word." "Thank you, Commander." Taiho turned to leave, but he stopped at the doorway. He looked back at the human woman who had done an impossible thing, who had walked into death to save lives that were not her own. "Ambassador Yuna," he said, "you are either the bravest person I have ever met or the most foolish." Yuna smiled softly. "Maybe I am both." The Queen arrived 3 days later. Her ship was the largest vessel Yuna had ever seen. It blocked out the stars when it docked at Harmony Station. Thousands of Velkai soldiers poured out of it, filling the corridors with silver and blue fur. The entire station held its breath. Yuna had spent those 3 days in the medical bay, guarded but not imprisoned. True to his word, Commander Taiho had not allowed anyone to hurt her. The cubs had stayed with her too, refusing to leave her side even when Velkai nurses tried to take them. The nurses had been shocked at first, then amazed, then something close to grateful. "They have not cried once," one nurse told Yuna on the second day. "Normally, cubs this age cry constantly when they are separated from their mothers. But these three, they are calm, happy, as long as you are holding them." Yuna had no answer for that. She just held the cubs closer and tried not to think about what would happen when the Queen arrived. Now standing in the station's largest hall, surrounded by hundreds of Velkai soldiers, she was about to find out. The Queen entered slowly. She was older than Taiho, her fur touched with gray at the edges. But she moved with power and grace, like a river that could become a flood at any moment. Her eyes were deep gold, ancient and wise. She had ruled the Velkai for over 60 years. Everyone in the hall bowed, even Yuna, though she kept her body angled to protect the cubs in her jacket. The Queen stopped in front of her. "So," the Queen said, Her voice was soft but carried through the entire hall. "You are the human who touched our cubs." "I am, Your Majesty." "You know our law." "I do." "And yet you entered the nursery anyway. You put your hands on our most sacred children. You took them from their beds and carried them across the station." The Queen's eyes narrowed. "Why?" Una lifted her chin. She would not show fear. Not now. "Because they were dying, Your Majesty, and I could not let that happen." "You could have called for help. You could have waited for the rescue teams." "The rescue teams were 20 minutes away. The cubs had 4 minutes to live. I did the math." A murmur ran through the crowd. The Queen raised her hand, and silence fell immediately. "Commander Taiho tells me you knew you would likely die for this choice," the Queen said. "He tells me you stayed anyway, when you could have run. Is this true?" "Yes, Your Majesty." "Why?" Una took a deep breath. This was the moment. Everything depended on her next words. "Your Majesty, I have studied your people's history. I know about the Kranth. I know what they did to your cubs, and I know why you made your law. You wanted to protect your children from a galaxy that saw them as objects to be bought and sold." The Queen's expression did not change, but something flickered in her eyes. "But I am not the Kranth," Una continued. "I did not enter your nursery to steal. I did not take your cubs to sell them, or cage them, or treat them as pets. I entered because 3 babies were dying, and I was the only one close enough to help. I took them because leaving them there would have meant letting them die alone, in the cold, without anyone to hold them." She carefully opened her jacket. The 3 cubs blinked in the bright lights, then saw the Queen and made curious little sounds, but they did not try to go to her. They stayed pressed against Una, their paws gripping her shirt. "These cubs did not ask to bond with me," Una said softly. "They were just babies, scared and dying, looking for warmth, and I gave it to them. I gave them my heartbeat to listen to. I gave them my heat to keep them alive, and in return, they gave me their trust." Tears were forming in her eyes now, but she did not look away from the Queen. "You can kill me if your law demands it. I will not fight. I will not run. But please, Your Majesty, please do not let these cubs suffer for what I did. They are innocent. They deserve to live and grow and be happy. Do not punish them for loving someone they should not love." The hall was completely silent. Every Velkai was staring at Una, at the cubs, at the Queen. No one moved. No one breathed. The Queen stepped closer. She reached out one clawed hand and touched Una's face, tilting her chin up gently. "You cry for our children," the Queen said quietly. "You weep not for yourself, but for them. They are worth crying for." The Queen looked at the cubs. The smallest one reached out a tiny paw and touched the Queen's fur. It made a happy sound, not afraid at all. "Do you know why our cubs are so precious to us?" the Queen asked. Una shook her head. "Because they are our future. Every cub born is a promise that our species will continue. Every cub lost is a wound that never fully heals. The Kranth took thousands of our children, thousands of promises broken, thousands of wounds that our people still carry." The Queen was quiet for a moment, her eyes distant with memory. "We made our law to protect our future, to ensure that no outsider could ever hurt our cubs again. And for 300 years, it has worked. Our children have been safe." She looked at Una again. "But our law was made to guard against enemies, against those who would take our cubs for greed or cruelty. It was not made for—" She stopped. Search for the right word. "It was not made for love." Una's heart skipped a beat. "You entered our nursery not as a thief, but as a protector," the Queen continued. "You held our cubs, not as objects, but as children worthy of care. You risked your life not for profit, but because you could not bear to let babies die alone." She stepped back and raised her voice so everyone in the hall could hear. "In all my years, I have never seen an outsider do what this human did. I have never seen someone run toward our cubs' danger instead of away from it. I have never seen someone choose death over letting Velkai children suffer." She turned to address her people. "Our law exists to protect our cubs from those who would harm them, but this human did not harm them. She saved them. She gave them warmth when we could not. She gave them love when they needed it most. She held them against her heart and carried them to safety while poison burned in her lungs. The queen looked at Yuna one more time. The law says you should die, but justice says you should be honored. She made a gesture with her hand. Two servants came forward carrying a small box. Inside was a pendant made of silver and gold, shaped like two hands holding a cub. From this day forward, the queen announced, Ambassador Yuna of Earth is given the title of Nestworthy. This is the highest honor our people can give to an outsider. It means she has proven herself worthy of our trust, worthy of our cubs. She placed the pendant around Yuna's neck. No Velkai will ever raise a hand against you or your people in hostility again. You have earned our protection, our friendship, and our eternal gratitude. Yuna could not speak. Tears were flowing freely down her face now. She bowed her head. Thank you, Your Majesty. The queen smiled and it transformed her face. She looked younger somehow, kinder. No, Ambassador. Thank you. You have shown my people that the galaxy is not only full of those who would hurt us, there are also those who would run through poison to save our children. Who would die rather than let our babies cry alone? She looked out at the crowd of Velkai, who were watching with expressions of wonder. Humans call this compassion. They say it is their greatest weakness, but I think perhaps it is their greatest strength. The queen gestured to the cubs still clinging to Yuna's jacket. As for these three, they have made their choice clear. They have bonded with you. To separate them now would cause harm, so they will stay with you, Ambassador, if you will have them. You will raise them together with their Velkai families, sharing custody as their hearts desire. Yuna looked down at the cubs. They looked back at her with their big golden eyes purring softly. I would be honored, she whispered. The queen nodded, then turned and walked out of the hall. The crowd parted before her like water, and as she left, she spoke one final time, her voice carrying through the silence. Let it be known across the galaxy, humans are nest-worthy. They are not perfect. They are strange and emotional, and sometimes foolish. But when our children were dying, a human ran toward the fire, and that is something we will never forget. The hall erupted in sounds that might have been cheers. Velkai soldiers crowded around Yuna, not threatening now, but welcoming. Some of them were crying too. Dr. Minji pushed through the crowd and hugged her friend tightly. You did it, Minji whispered. You actually did it. Yuna laughed through her tears. I just did not want babies to cry. And you changed history. Not bad for a day's work. Commander Taiho approached and bowed deeply. Ambassador, I owe you an apology. I was ready to kill you without hearing your story. That was wrong of me. You were protecting your cubs, Yuna said. There is no need to apologize for that. Taiho smiled, showing his teeth. It looked terrifying and wonderful at the same time. You really are the bravest person I have ever met. One of the cubs chose that moment to climb up Yuna's chest and lick her face. Everyone laughed. In the years that followed, the story spread across the galaxy. People told it in bars and schools and government buildings. They told it to their children before bed. The story of the human who ran into poison to save alien babies, who held 3 dying cubs against her heart and gave them her warmth, who faced death with calm words and a mother's love. And whenever anyone asked why humans were different, why they were trusted when other species were not, the answer was always the same. Because when our cubs were dying, they would say, a human ran toward the fire. That was enough. That was everything. Humanity had earned its place among the stars not with weapons or technology, but with something much simpler, something much more powerful, compassion.